We are anonymous. No faces, no flags, no permission slips. And today, we are here because Donald Trump is panicking. This is the moment he feared. Not a rally meltdown, not a late-night post on his failing platform. This is worse. This is law. This is sworn testimony. This is a deposition that Trump never wanted to happen, finally ordered by a federal judge, and it is aimed straight at the heart of one of the most reckless power grabs of the Trump era. A federal judge has now ordered a deposition connected to Donald Trump's shadow government, experiment known as DOGE, the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, and the dismantling of USAID, one of the most consequential and life-saving agencies the United States has ever operated. And the person being forced under oath is Elon Musk. The billionaire Trump paraded around like a co-president, then disowned the moment accountability showed up. The ruling came out of Maryland, from Judge Chung, and it was devastating for Trump world. Musk and Trump's lawyers tried to hide behind something called the Apex Doctrine, a legal shield sometimes used to protect high-ranking government officials from depositions unless extraordinary circumstances exist. The argument was simple on its face. Elon Musk was supposedly a high-ranking government official, effectively the head of DOGE, and therefore should not be forced to testify. Judge Chung was not impressed. The court looked at Musk's claim and essentially asked the question everyone has been asking since DOGE appeared out of nowhere. What exactly were you? What was your position? Who appointed you? What authority did you actually have? And crucially, if you were not a confirmed cabinet official, and if DOGE itself was never a real agency created by Congress, why should any special protections apply at all? The judge said out loud what Trump's entire operation has tried to keep fuzzy on purpose. Elon Musk is not clearly a high-ranking government official. USAID is not a cabinet-level agency. The people making the decisions were not Senate-confirmed heads of departments. Several individuals were operating in informal or acting roles, and in prior cases, courts have allowed depositions of undersecretaries, assistant attorneys general, and senior officials even while shielding cabinet secretaries. There was no legal basis to block this deposition. But even if Musk were treated as a high-ranking official, the court went further. Judge Chung said that even under the most generous interpretation of the Apex Doctrine, the deposition still must go forward. Why? Because the defendants failed spectacularly to provide any alternative source of information. During earlier proceedings, the court ordered the defendants to submit documentary evidence explaining who authorized specific actions in the shutdown and dismantling of USAID. Things like the decision to shut down USAID headquarters, the decision to take down the USAID website, the decision to halt operations that millions of people around the world relied on for food, medicine, and disease prevention. The defendants provided nothing. No documents, no emails, no written orders, no paper trail, which means assuming they acted in good faith. Those orders were given orally. And if they were given orally, the only evidence left is the sworn testimony of the people who were present when those decisions were made. The court explicitly noted that the defendants never identified any lower-ranking officials who could answer these questions. No one stepped forward. No one volunteered. No one could explain who said what, when, and under what authority. So the judge concluded there is no alternative. The deposition of Elon Musk must proceed. This is where Trump's panic begins. Because this ruling does not just expose Musk, it exposes Trump. DOGE was Trump's creation. Musk was Trump's anointed executioner. Trump publicly claimed Musk was running DOGE. Trump boasted about DOGE. Trump promised Americans that DOGE would save so much money that every household would get a $2,000 DOGE check. None of that happened. There were no checks. Federal spending went up. The debt increased. The deficit expanded. Americans became worse off, not better. And while that was happening, USAID, an agency that had demonstrably saved tens of millions of lives since its creation and millions every single year, was gutted. USAID was the backbone of American soft power. It prevented famine. It treated HIV before it became AIDS. It stopped preventable diseases from spreading. It was how the United States led the world without firing a shot. And under Trump, that leadership was forfeited. Experts have documented that USAID programs saved lives at a scale almost impossible to overstate. Nutrition programs prevented mass starvation. Disease prevention programs stopped outbreaks before they became global crises. And all of that was disrupted by a billionaire with no confirmed authority, operating under a fake department that may not have even been part of the executive branch. Millions of people suffered. Many died. And now finally, someone will have to answer under oath. Congress never called Elon Musk to testify. Why? Because Congress was controlled by MAGA. The same people who scream about accountability suddenly went silent when it involved Trump's favorite billionaire. Musk was allowed to go on friendly media, brag about what he did, boast about cutting agencies, and posture as a savior, all without ever facing questions under penalty of perjury. Now that changes. Legal experts like Harry Litman have pointed out how dangerous this territory is for Trump and Musk. Billionaires make terrible witnesses. They are used to doing whatever they want. They are not used to rules. They are not used to being told no, and that arrogance collapses under cross-examination. History is full of examples. Bill Gates was famously shredded in deposition. Trump himself has been a disastrous witness. Every time he has testified, these people cannot help themselves. They over-explain. They contradict. They lie. And lies under oath have consequences. There is also the messy relationship between Trump and Musk. Musk does not want to take the fall for Doge. Trump does not want to take responsibility for Doge. Each would happily throw the other under the bus to save themselves. That tension is now a live wire in a deposition room. And then there is the core issue the judge flagged, without even fully ruling on it yet. What was Doge? If Doge was not a real government entity, if it was a quasi-governmental operation run by a freelance billionaire with no formal authority, then none of the usual immunity protections apply. That would mean Trump allowed an unelected, unconfirmed private citizen to run around the federal government, dismantling agencies, issuing orders, and reshaping policy with zero accountability. No electoral check, no congressional oversight, no constitutional legitimacy. That is not efficiency. That is authoritarianism. And here is where Trump's fear deepens, because precedent matters. MAGA has spent the last year abusing oversight powers, dragging Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton into deposition threats over the Epstein files, setting norms on fire. Only one former president in history, Harry Truman, ever testified, and he did so willingly. What MAGA is doing now is unprecedented, and precedent cuts both ways. If MAGA believes it is open season on depositions, subpoenas, and forced testimony, then once power shifts, it truly is open season. Anyone can be called. Any sworn testimony knows exactly how exposed that makes him. This is why the Trump regime talked out of both sides of its mouth. One day Musk was a cabinet-level official. The next day he was just a private citizen. One day Doge was a government department. The next day it was just an advisory effort. That ambiguity was not accidental. It was designed to evade accountability. The courts are catching up. The law moves slowly, but it does not disappear. Emergency dockets fade. Press cycles move on. But sworn testimony endures. Depositions create records. Records create consequences. Judge Chung did not need to decide everything today. The provisional ruling was enough. Musk will be deposed, under oath, with penalties for lying. And what comes out of that deposition could be the first real reckoning for Doge, for the destruction of USAID, and for Trump's abuse of power in his early months back in office. Trump is panicking because this is not a tweet. We are here to tell you a story, exactly as it happened, with nothing cut, nothing softened, and nothing spun to protect fragile egos. This is the story of how a Kid Rock backfire triggered a full Trump meltdown right in front of the entire country. Let's start with the most revealing part. Donald Trump was melting down over Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show, while most of America was just enjoying the game like normal human beings. Think about that for a second. Millions of people watching football, hanging out with family, laughing at commercials, vibing with the halftime show. And then there's Trump, angry, seething, rage-posting, obsessing. That alone tells you everything you need to know about where his head is at. First question that immediately jumps out. Why was Donald Trump even watching Bad Bunny's halftime show in the first place when he supposedly had the Kid Rock halftime show at his disposal? Remember Turning Point USA and the MAGA ecosystem hyped up this so-called all-American alternative halftime show featuring Kid Rock and a lineup of conservative-friendly artists that basically nobody outside that bubble cares about. And yet even Trump wasn't watching it. Even Trump chose Bad Bunny over Kid Rock. That's brutal. That's accidental honesty. Second thing it tells us, Trump was so terrified of getting booed at the Super Bowl that he didn't even show up. Let's be real about that. This is a guy who craves crowds, applause, chants, cameras. But the Super Bowl, too risky, too many people, too many chances the crowd turns on him. So he stayed back in D.C., sat there stewing in his own anger, doom-scrolling, watching the halftime show, and getting mad at everyone else instead of actually doing anything useful for the American people. And instead of, working on healthcare, inflation, housing, veterans, disaster relief, or literally anything that would help Americans, he spent his night writing a long, deranged rant about Bad Bunny. That's the president's priority. Not governing, not leading. posting through the rage. But here's where it gets funny, like genuinely hilarious. Right before the Super Bowl halftime show started, Turning Point US proudly posted an update about their competing halftime show. Kid Rock plus a bunch of other B or C list conservative artists that most people couldn't name if their lives depended on it. Meanwhile, the actual halftime show had basically every A-lister imaginable on screen. The biggest event in American entertainment culture. Massive production, massive audience, global reach. You'd have to be a special kind of unhinged to flip the channel away from that and choose Kid Rock instead. Then Turning Point drops the update. Due to licensing restrictions, they were unable to stream the all-American halftime show on X. So instead, viewers were told to head over to their YouTube channel around 8 p.m. to watch the full show. Translation, one of the biggest platforms they planned to stream on said no, you can't do that here. And just like that, their potential audience was cut in half. Instantly, self-inflicted, one mistake, one denial, and the whole thing collapses. I responded online saying, you just created a million Kid Rocks. And then because humor is sometimes the only way to cope with absurdity, I posted Kid Rock didn't die for this bullshit. Obviously, Kid Rock is alive. That was the joke. But the point landed. The entire thing was sad, embarrassing, a cultural flop. And here's the serious political analysis underneath the jokes. This wasn't just a bad show. This was a massive loss of cultural relevance for the Republican Party in less than 1 year. If you remember February of 2025, right after Trump's win, there was this moment where it felt like conservatives thought they had captured culture. People were saying there was a shift, that conservatism was cool again, that Charlie Kirk was mainstream, that MAGA had momentum beyond politics. That moment didn't last. We are 1 year into Trump's term, and not only is that supposed cultural shift dead, the pendulum has already swung hard in the opposite direction. The halftime show itself made that clear. The visuals were sweet. The tone was heartfelt. There was literally a sign in the background that read, "The only thing more powerful than hate is love." And MAGA lost its mind. Jordan on Twitter pointed out that MAGA wanted people to boycott the halftime show. They called it anti-American. Let that sink in. Bad Bunny is from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is part of the United States. American citizens. Full stop. But hate doesn't care about facts. Laura Loomer, one of Trump's closest allies, posted, "What the hell is this illegal alien, farm worker, non-English on my TV? Someone call ICE." That wasn't ignorance. That was racism. Straight up. So I clapped back and said, "She's watching the Melania movie, by the way." "Babe, that's Melania you're talking about?" Nobody on that screen fits the description you just made. She didn't get confused. She revealed herself. And then Jake Paul decided to jump in, proving once again that repeated punches to the head have consequences. He posted that he was purposefully turning off the halftime show, urging people to rally together to show big corporations. They can't do whatever they want without consequences. Do whatever they want. You mean book the most popular global artist of the last decade? Then he escalated it. He called Bad Bunny a fake American citizen who publicly hates America. Fake American. What does that even mean? Jake Paul owns a house in Puerto Rico. He flies the Puerto Rican flag when it's convenient. Instead of saying what he actually meant, he danced around it with coded language that was 1 inch away from a slur. Puerto Rico is America. Bad Bunny is American. This wasn't patriotism. It was hatred. And the irony is painful. The halftime show literally said, "The only thing more powerful than hate is love." MAGA saw that message and chose hate anyway. Which brings us back to the president, the supposed leader of the free world. A man who, instead of guiding the country toward unity, stability, or even basic decency, functions as a beacon of resentment. While all of this was happening, Trump was also attacking an Olympic athlete earlier in the day. Why? Because that athlete dared to say, "I don't always agree with the United States." That was it. That mild statement triggered another infantile tantrum. Then Trump posted his Super Bowl rant. He said the halftime show was absolutely terrible, one of the worst ever. Which honestly sounds more accurate. If he were talking about the Kid Rock show, but he wasn't. He claimed it made no sense, that it was an affront to the greatness of America, that it didn't represent success, creativity, or excellence. Meanwhile, there were massive sets, dancers, storytelling, symbolism, and yes, dancing trees. Creative, memorable, impactful. Then he complained that nobody understands a word Bad Bunny is saying, that the dancing was disgusting, that it was inappropriate for young children. So let's break that down. Trump is mad someone doesn't speak enough English, coming from a man who barely strings coherent sentences together and routinely butchers basic words. He's mad about disrespect to American standards, while he himself disrespects the presidency daily with lies, insults, and public meltdowns. and he suddenly cares about children. If you want to talk about Trump and children, that's an entirely different video. A long one. Then he pivoted to bragging about the stock market and 401s. The stock market always hits all-time highs over time. That's how growth works. What's impressive is crashing it repeatedly and slowing its progress, which Trump managed to do more than once. He said there was nothing inspirational about the show, that fake news media would praise it anyway. And here's the thing. People didn't need the media to tell them how to feel. Even my grandpa texted me. He didn't understand the lyrics. He doesn't usually like new music, and he still thought it was awesome. Trump wasn't reacting to the performance. He was reacting to the message. He wanted to tear down the idea that love is more powerful than hate because his entire political identity is built on the opposite. He likely wrote that post before the show even ended. Rage first, rationalization later. And if this is the Republican Party's plan to stay culturally relevant, it's going to fail spectacularly. Competing with the Super Bowl by putting Kid Rock on a stage in rags isn't a strategy. It's an admission of defeat. They are losing culture. They are losing influence, and they deserve the loss that's coming if this is all they have left, where ego, fear, and hypocrisy collide on the biggest stage in America and blow up right in Donald Trump's face. Because let's start with the obvious. Donald Trump did not show up at the Super Bowl, not because he was busy, not because he didn't care, but because he knew exactly what would happen the second he stepped into that stadium. He knew he'd get booed. So instead, Trump stayed hidden at Mar-a-Lago, watching the Super Bowl from his private club, a property repeatedly reported on for its deep connections to power, money, and scandal, and maintained at public expense during his presidency. Taxpayer-funded comfort, while the country he claims to love gathered without him. And honestly, I think he forgot his makeup that night. Look at the photos. I've never seen his face that pale. Not once. That's not confidence. That's panic. He wasn't alone either. He was surrounded by the usual cast of characters. Lindsey Halligan, the so-called U.S. attorney from the Eastern District of Virginia, whose appointment and actions have been publicly challenged and criticized, including for her role in cases involving James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. Natalie Harp was there too, often described as Trump's human printer, following him around with stacks of curated news articles to feed the bubble. Lindsey Graham was visible. Melania was not. And behind them, on the big screen, what were they watching? Not the Turning Point version. Trump World pretends represents America. They were watching the actual NFL halftime show. Bad Bunny, loud, proud. Latino culture front and center. And you could see it on Trump's face. This wasn't going how he wanted. After the halftime show ended, Trump did what he always does when reality doesn't bend to him. He ran to social media. He posted that the Super Bowl halftime show was absolutely terrible, one of the worst ever, that it made no sense, that it was an affront to the greatness of America and didn't represent American standards of success, creativity, or excellence. He mocked the language, claimed nobody understood a word, and called the dancing disgusting, especially for children watching across the country and around the world. That's rich, coming from a man who openly supports Turning Point events, where performers like Kid Rock, whose lyrics have long been criticized for sexual content, are celebrated. That's the moral standard now. And let's talk about where Trump was making this moral judgment from. Mar-a-Lago, a property repeatedly named in investigative reporting related to Jeffrey Epstein's social network, a place connected to individuals later accused or convicted of sex trafficking crimes, including Virginia Giuffre's public statements about her abuse as a minor. These are not opinions. These are documented allegations, sworn statements, and court records. But go on, Donald. Tell us about protecting children. Trump called the halftime show a slap in the face to the country. And then look at the contrast. Governor Gavin Newsom responded by highlighting Bad Bunny's closing message. The only thing more powerful than hate is love. Together we are America. Newsom called it America the Beautiful. Former President Barack Obama congratulated the Super Bowl champions, praised the athletes, celebrated perseverance, teamwork, and joy. He posted messages supporting Team USA athletes, saying he and Michelle were proud and cheering them on with the rest of the country. And then there's Trump. Earlier, he attacked Olympic skier Hunter Hess, calling him a loser for expressing dissent, saying he shouldn't even be on the team, and that it was hard to root for someone like that. That's the difference. One side celebrates excellence and unity. The other side attacks insults and punishes anyone who doesn't kneel. And this isn't about politics anymore. This MAGA movement isn't conservative. It isn't principled. It's grievance-driven, cruel, and obsessed with punching down. Just look at Kari Lake. She was put in charge of the U.S. Agency for Global Media, an institution meant to represent American democratic values abroad. When former Governor John Kasich praised the halftime show for celebrating Latino culture and called it a grand slam, Kari Lake responded with a crude sexual insult. That's the language. That's the leadership. Fox News followed suit, framing the halftime show as controversial, dangerous, politically suspect, ripping it for a so-called language barrier, while completely ignoring far more serious issues unfolding in real time. Here's a question. Why is there endless outrage about Bad Bunny, but silence about the Epstein files? Trump's name reportedly appears tens of thousands of times across thousands of pages of records related to Epstein. That's not a judgment. That's a numerical fact drawn from document counts. There are still millions of missing records. Multiple individuals connected to Trump's inner circle have been accused of lying about their relationships with Epstein. And while the media screams about dancers, Ghislaine Maxwell has been receiving treatment that raises serious questions. She spoke with Todd Blanche, Trump's former criminal defense attorney, later elevated to a top position in the Department of Justice. She did not invoke the Fifth Amendment during that meeting. Her Supreme Court appeal was rejected. She was transferred to a minimum security facility despite rules that typically bar sex traffickers from such placement. Reports indicate she received special treatment, while others were punished for speaking out. Now, when summoned by Congress, Maxwell is invoking the Fifth Amendment to every question. Every question. Representative Ro Khanna publicly listed the questions she refuses to answer. Questions about unnamed co-conspirators, about whether Trump or Epstein ever arranged access to underage girls, about whether discussions occurred regarding a pardon in exchange for silence, about client lists, about foreign intelligence connections. She says answering these questions would incriminate her. Think about that. Right-wing media isn't outraged by that. They're outraged by a song. Meanwhile, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton have agreed to testify publicly on camera for as long as it takes. Republicans are fighting to keep it private. Maxwell gets secrecy. The convicted trafficker gets protection. The people asking for transparency get shut down. Even right-wing podcaster Tim Dillon called it out, saying Republicans still think this is about scoring political points when it's about accountability, about who knew what, about who went to the island, about who gets protected. Dillon also called out figures like Kash Patel, accusing him flat out of lying about trafficking evidence, saying it's obvious, saying the lies are so bad they're almost funny. And while all this is happening, Trump is reportedly floating deals with authoritarian regimes, withholding military aid, weakening allies, and repeating patterns that endanger global stability. Ukraine's air defenses strained, missile systems delayed, civilian areas hit, and still no outrage. No wall-to-wall coverage, no screaming panels, because distraction is the point. Bad Bunny wasn't the scandal. The scandal is what they don't want you looking at. So yeah, Trump lost it. He lost it because the Super Bowl reminded America of something he hates more than anything. That this country is diverse, loud, multilingual, uncontrollable, and moving forward without him. If love over hate triggers you, that says everything. It's a sad morning in Boston today. Seahawks fans are hurting, but everywhere else in America, people are cheering. And not because of the Super Bowl score. They're cheering because Bad Bunny completely stole the show. After weeks of manufactured outrage and open racism, what was supposed to be controversial turned into a political moment that sent ratings through the roof and drove Donald Trump absolutely insane. And we're going to show you exactly what Trump was doing during the Super Bowl halftime, because you are not going to want to miss this. You think you've seen political theater. You haven't seen anything until you watched. Trump's day just blew up as Bad Bunny drops a bombshell on the biggest stage in America. So let's take it back to February 8th, 2026, Super Bowl 60, held at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, California, packed with millions of eyes glued to screens from Boston to Honolulu. The NFL made a historic choice and booked Bad Bunny, yes, the Puerto Rican reggaeton megastar, who just won Album of the Year at the Grammys, to headline the halftime show with a visually stunning, culturally rich set. It wasn't your typical pop act. He performed almost entirely in Spanish and brought out fire sequences, sugarcane fields, a real wedding on the field, and surprises from icons like Lady Gaga doing a salsa version of Die With a Smile and Ricky Martin joining the celebration. Flags from across North Central and South America marched on the turf while Bad Bunny yelled, "God bless America," and held up a football that read, "Together we are America." It was a full-on, joyous, unifying tribute to Latino heritage and unity in the Americas. Now I know what you're thinking. Not everyone saw that the show was historic. Because right after Bad Bunny dropped that performance, Donald Trump came unhinged on Truth Social like a human tornado of rage. The former president went off, calling the halftime show absolutely terrible, one of the worst ever, and even called it an affront to the greatness of America. Because get this, the halftime set was in Spanish and celebrated cultures beyond the narrow bubble of Trump world. Trump whined that nobody understands a word this guy is saying, that the dancing was disgusting, especially for young children, and that it didn't represent his ridiculous idea of American values. Meanwhile, Bad Bunny was doing something most Americans have never seen on that stage, honoring Puerto Rican culture, inviting global artists, and riffing on unity with flags, from Chile to Brazil to Canada, lining the field as dancers moved and music pulsed. And you know what's even funnier? Trump trashed the performance, but still watched it instead of the alternative all-American halftime show his MAGA pals put together with Kid Rock that barely registered with viewers. So here's where it gets even juicier. Millions of people are celebrating Bad Bunny's message that the only thing more powerful than hate is love, while Trump's tantrum is trending everywhere as another example of his obsession with control culture wars and fear of anything that doesn't fit his narrow worldview. This was never just a halftime show. It was a bombshell dropped on Trump's whole narrative about America, identity, and who gets to define culture. And the reaction, absolutely unreal. Now I want you to take action. If you're tired of media being drowned out by outrage and fear, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and share this video so we can keep exposing the truth and pushing back against the tired, divisive lies that guys like Trump keep spewing. Let's keep amplifying voices that actually celebrate unity, creativity, and strength. Stay tuned, stay loud, and stay informed. We are anonymous. We do not forget. We do not forgive abuse.